All right, let's speak now to Douglas Alexander, Secretary of State for Scotland. Minister, thank you very much for being with us. Sorry, Secretary of State, thank you very much for being with us, and congratulations on the new job. Before I talk to you about some of the other day's news, just a comment from you on the GDP figures, flatlining. Government's stated mission is to go for growth. You're not really going for it.
Well, it's a challenge globally at the moment. We had in the first 6 months of the year the strongest growth in the G7, but you're right to recognise there are global headwinds, not just high energy prices following the invasion of Ukraine, but some of the challenges that we faced in relation to the trade environment that I've been dealing with as Trade Minister.
OK. Douglas Alexander, you'll acknowledge that the situation with the US ambassador is a mess, yes?
These are not headlines anybody wanted, absolutely.
Who's most at fault? Is it Lord Mandelson for accepting the job or the Prime Minister for giving him the job?
Well, before we start, I just want to say that my reaction, I'm sure like most Sky viewers, when I saw those emails was both, honestly, incredulity and revulsion. So I'm not here to defend him. What is important is to know that when the Prime Minister became aware of the content of those emails on Wednesday, by Thursday morning, Peter Mandelson was dismissed as the ambassador. The reason he was appointed was a judgment that, given the depth of his experience as a former trade commissioner for the European Union, his long experience in politics and doing politics at the highest international levels, he could do a job for the United Kingdom. We knew this was an unconventional presidential administration, and that was the basis on which there was a judgment that we needed an unconventional ambassador.
You've used the word judgment twice, so you put in a position, a man, as our ambassador to the United States, who was a friend of a convicted paedophile. That doesn't look like a judgment.
Well, it was a matter of record that there had been an association previously between Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein, and if what has emerged now had been known at the time, there is no doubt he would not have been appointed. But the character of the relationship, the depth of the relationship that emerged in those emails on Wednesday, frankly, made his position impossible. It was impossible for the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. It was impossible in terms of the UK's reputation, and it was impossible given the standards that the Prime Minister expects from people engaged in public service.
So it's the emails that did it. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Alexander? Yeah. So the Prime Minister was aware that Lord Mandelson wrote in Jeffrey Epstein's birthday book in 2003 describing him as his best pal. He was aware of that, yes?
I don't think that was the case. I'm not certain, but my understanding is that only emerged on Tuesday. That was a paper birthday card, so I'm not sure it would have been revealed in vetting, but vetting is necessarily a secret matter, and as a minister in a different department, I'm not aware as to the full contents of the information. But when that birthday card emerged on the Tuesday, that was, as I understand it, new information.
OK, so you think that was new information. We'll see if that is the case. What about the fact that Mandelson stayed at Epstein's house in 2009 after he was convicted in Florida? Was that known?
I'm not aware of what was Peter Mandelson's diary, nor am I aware of what happens in the security vetting process, which necessarily is a secret process and is kept off the desks of other ministers and indeed many ministers.
I mean, they also had many contacts in 2010 and 2011 as well. And the point is, I know what you're going to say when I ask you those questions, that you're not aware of it. But Lord Mandelson said he was clear. He made this point clearly known to Number 10 and to the Prime Minister. And our own Sam Coates, our Deputy Political Editor, says that the security services were concerned about it too. And they made that clear. Why wasn't that red flag adhered to by the Prime Minister?
I've got a great deal of time for Sam Coates. He's a very capable journalist, but I genuinely do not know. Firstly, I would pay tribute to the security services. They do an extraordinary job for our country, necessarily away from the headlights and away from the cameras each and every day. But frankly, I'm not in a position to comment on briefing as to who said what to whom. What we do know is there were two processes that were underway. There is a standard process of security vetting, what's called DV clearance in the Whitehall parlance. That was undertaken. That's undertaken at a departmental level. Because this was a senior appointment in the Foreign Office, that process would have been overseen by the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. My understanding is it's actually carried out by an agency within the Cabinet Office. And then, yes, there was a political judgment made by the Prime Minister that Peter Mandelson, given his unique experience in trade, was well qualified to support and advance the UK's interests in what we judge was going to be an absolutely central aspect of the relationship between the Trump administration and the British government.
You've said it again, and I will just say again that despite him being a known confidant and friend of a convicted paedophile, you thought that that judgment outweighed it. So that's your decision. Government have made that choice. And I know you're not questioning Sam's sourcing, because, of course, Sam will have sourced his story well, because it's only because of journalists that we've got to this story, haven't we? What this all appears like, Mr. Alexander, is that if these stories hadn't have come out, if the Democrats hadn't released that documentation, Lord Mandelson would still be in post.
Well, I concur with that point of view in the sense that I am unaware as to the content of these emails until they emerged on Wednesday. And in that sense, whether it was Bloomberg or whether it was Sun publishing the emails, that was material and new information. As soon as those emails were read by the Prime Minister on Wednesday evening, Peter Mandelson was dismissed on Thursday morning.
Look, you came into government promising to be more ethical. You are aware that this is just the latest instance of this government eroding the public's trust in politics. You appointed this individual knowing all this about him and would have kept him in post if journalists hadn't done their job and dug up some of the dirt.
You won't find me criticising journalists. Part of the strength of our parliamentary democracy is a free press that is unyielding in its determination to get to the truth. I have great respect for the press and the independence of the press. In relation to the standards, what did the Prime Minister say? He said in opposition that he would strengthen the ministerial code, he would strengthen the office of the advisor on ministerial standards. And regrettably, 1 week after another, in the case of Angela Rayner and in the case of Peter Mandelson, a judgment has had to be reached quickly by the Prime Minister that their conduct fell below.
I'm not going to let you do that, because you can frame it in that way, but you can also frame it in this way, that the Prime Minister made a conscious decision to appoint these individuals, then to go to Parliament and defend them, and then a day later have to reverse ferret on them. That says that he is making the wrong decision in the first place.
Well, listen, Keir Starmer was, of course, a very distinguished and capable prosecutor, prosecuting paedophiles, amongst others, given the horrors of Jeffrey Epstein. He works on the basis of evidence. New evidence emerged on Wednesday evening, and the Prime Minister dismissed Peter Mandelson on Thursday morning. I have worked in Downing Street in the past closely with Prime Ministers Tony Blair, Gordon Brown and others. Prime Ministers are making a whole range of decisions each and every day. I actually want a Prime Minister who works on the basis of evidence. When those emails emerged, that was materially new evidence in relation to the extent, the character and the nature of the relationship between Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein. When that reached the Prime Minister's desk, he acted and dismissed the ambassador.
Look, our viewers will have to decide whether that's a convincing argument as to whether or not that is the right form of judgment. And you mentioned the Prime Minister's past as a prosecutor. That means he's a curious individual. Wasn't curious enough in this case. What would you say to victims of sexual assault? This government says they're going to halve violence against women and girls within 10 years. Looks difficult to do. What would you say to those victims, knowing that you would have kept in office a man who was friends with a convicted child abuser?
Firstly, the victims of any form of sexual violence should be at the very forefront of our minds today, not least given the heinous crimes of Jeffrey Epstein. Secondly, there is a security vetting process that is undertaken, and then there was a judgment made in terms of the UK's national interest. But I can assure you, given his own history, Keir Starmer is deeply aware of the trauma and horror that can be caused by sexual crimes, and indeed that was a central feature of the work he was seeking to undertake, not just as a prosecutor himself, but when leading the Crown Prosecution Service.
OK, a final point to you, Secretary of State. We've seen that Prince Harry has gone to Kyiv for a visit. I don't know if you've seen this news. It just dropped a short while ago. I'm sure you've been very busy briefing and getting ready for your interviews this morning. But your reaction to the news of the Duke of Sussex going to Ukraine?
Actually seen that, so it's news to me. Having myself travelled into Kyiv just a couple of months after the invasion, I was very humbled by not just the extraordinary courage of the Ukrainian people, but also, frankly, and this was under the previous government, not under the Labour government, the deep affection they felt towards the United Kingdom, for the United Kingdom having stepped up. That is a whole nation response from the United Kingdom. The Conservative government's got it right on Ukraine. I pay due tribute to Ben Wallace, the former Defence Secretary, and others in the judgments they made when they were in power. There has been a complete cross-party consensus. And I think Prince Harry probably reflects the depth and strength of feeling in support of Ukraine right across British society.
OK, Douglas Alexander, Secretary of State for Scotland, thank you for joining us.